All right, on to the top focus now. We're looking at U.S. Now immigration and customs enforcement officers, that's the ICE officers in Minnesota, have been given new operational instructions directing them not to engage with agitators during enforcement actions following two deadly shootings of U.S. citizens earlier this month. However, under the new guidelines, officers are now instructed to focus only on immigrants with criminal charges or convictions. ICE agents are required to use megaphones to issue clear commands and prioritize arrests linked to criminal activity. This policy shift follows the fatal shooting of Alex Pretti, with an exclusive video obtained by American media outlet that shows his confrontation with ICE officers before his death. Furthermore, the change aligns with President Trump's efforts to de-escalate tension in the state after the controversial shootings. Joining me now in this discussion is Madhav Nalapat. He's the editorial director at the Sunday Guardian and joins us from New Delhi. Mr. Nalapat, thanks very much for joining me. Do you think the new guidelines that have come in are rather too late? Did two people really have to die for Trump to reflect and issue these new directives?
Well, I'd like to point out that so far as the ICE shootings are concerned, I think a majority of American citizens have had their conscience stirred, and I'm talking also of MAGA elements. The fact is that this is, in ICE officers believe, they're like, oh, 007, they can get away with murder. And many of them have precisely done that. They have gotten away with murder because Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem is basically giving blanket immunity to them by always defending their acts. Now, finally, I think the White House is awakened to the fact that this is proving very unpopular with American people when they see American citizens being shot down in cold blood by what looks like, commandos from another planet almost. Then I think the American citizens also are turning against the tactics of ICE, and as a consequence, they are basically becoming hostile to President Trump. So that's why the White House had to soften its tone, especially after the Pretti shooting, when a person was gunned down in cold blood, and Kristi Noem wrongly said that he pulled a gun. But actually, none of the visuals show that he pulled any gun. He was shot in cold blood. In fact, he raised his hands in surrender when he was shot. So the reality of the situation is this is proving highly unpopular with the American public, and as a consequence, the White House is having to backtrack, and that's why now they're going softer on that. That's going to stop ICE from carrying out these almost murderous attacks on innocent citizens on suspicion that they're foreign immigrants or not. And even if you're a foreigner and you're a visitor in the United States, you will be subject to this kind of horrible treatment. So now the United States is no longer a safe country to go to. As a consequence, tourist footfalls have fallen very sharply. And overall, I would like to say that something better be done about ICE. Otherwise, the White House is going to face serious problem in the 2026 midterms. Thank you.
Right, Madhav Nalapat, that's exactly my next question to you was, given the statements that have come in from Kristi Noem, she's accused Rennie Good of weaponizing her car, then said for invoking domestic terrorism charges on her, and the actions of ICE and the federal versus state control that the conversation that these incidents have erupted a conversation on. How much do you think is going to impact the midterms?
Look, again, now let's not turn to Greenland. And where Greenland is concerned, I'd like to say that President Trump wants Greenland. Denmark has control over Greenland, and the entire European Union and the UK are joined together in opposing that. So I think President Trump is having to backtrack quite a bit on this. I don't know what he wants from Greenland, most likely the rare earths or something else like that, but he can do that in a much better way than threatening and bullying and cajoling. And of course, I mean, force is absolutely off the table. If force is used at the end of NATO, but even now the behavior of President Trump, where he is selectively joining some wars that the rest of NATO are involved in or selectively not joining, NATO is effectively a split organization. So I want to point out, as far as Greenland is concerned, I think there's a united front of the EU and a united front including the UK, where it's very, very clear that
Professor
Greenland
Nalapur,
must
we
be
were still
included
discussing the
for the
ICE
rest of
shootings.
them.
I'm sorry, I'd have to interrupt you there. I was asking you about how these ICE shootings and the fatal killings and the statements that have come in from Kristi Noem and Trump himself are going to impact his midterm prospects.
Look, I mean, the Danish foreign minister and the other high officials are expressing a lot of satisfaction and confidence. They don't want to provoke President Trump anymore. They know that if you express something which he doesn't like, he may get provoked and take even extreme actions. So that is a problem. So they're speaking in very diplomatic language, but at the same time, frankly, I think the United States under President Trump, what they want is much more than what the Danes are prepared to give. So I think sooner or later, one or the other side will have to relent. And in my view, judging from the international situation and the international outcry over Greenland, it'll have to be the United States under President Trump. I think overall the Trump administration is making itself deeply unpopular in the European Union and of course within the UK and and also now within the local population of the United States because of the ICE killings in so many locations, including that absolutely point blank murder of Pretti in Minneapolis. And so I want to point out that President Trump better change his ways, or the American voter who voted for him just 1 year ago will have changed their mind by the midterms and vote against him and his party. And that's going to be a disaster for the Republicans. It'll be a disaster for him, because then he'll be a lame duck president for the remainder of his term. Thank you.
Right. Thanks very much, Mr. Nalapur, then, for joining us in this discussion. And moving ahead, let's give you the latest on Greenland now. Talks between Denmark,